Welcome back to the It Starts With You podcast. I am so incredibly excited, and you are honestly in for such a treat with our guest today, Soji James. Soji, thank you so much for joining us.
Julie, like my soul, my heart is on fire to be here. I'm extremely excited. Like you inspire me, my friend. You love connecting with you. Every time I have a conversation, I leave feeling 20 times better. So I'm excited to just share some value and just connect with the listeners. Like, let's
Yeah.
go. Let's
Oh my
go.
gosh. Do you see? Do you already get that? We literally have been a couple seconds in and you can already feel it with Soji. So I am so excited. Soji is a client of mine. He joined my Speaker Space membership and is now in the Speaker Academy. And from the moment that I talked to him, and I think I even said this to you, Soji, I was like, you need to be in front of people. Like your story, your energy needs to be in front of people, inspiring them. So I'm so excited for our conversation today. We've got so many things we're going to talk about. Soji James is a strength coach, speaker, and meditation teacher. I mean, the letters after your name. So we've got NSCACSCS. I don't know what all these mean, but CFSCPN1. So he's legit. That helps burnt out dieters lose fat and feel confident AF by ditching quick fixes for a new relationship with food and fitness. He uses wellness as a tool to help people regain their autonomy, take back the pen, and own their life story. I just love that phrase so much. He is the creator of Elevate You, a 12-week coaching experience geared toward building sustainable health habits. Okay, Soji. So I just really love if you would just share with the listeners a little bit more about just your backstory and what led you into the place that you're in now.
So I guess this is gonna have to start off with me as a 10-year-old boy, right? At the side of a swimming pool on an elementary school senior trip. So this is like I've recently kind of been talking to people about this story in general because I didn't even realize this is what directed me into fitness in general. But this is one of those situations sitting down, like it was my aha moment, right? So I would say I was about 10 years old. We were on a senior trip to the Poconos, and I was like the last boy out to the swimming pool. All the guys had been out in front, all the girls were at one side of the pool. I have my towel over my shoulder. I think it was like a Pokemon towel because it was like hot
Yeah.
and popping
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time. Come on, I was collecting all the cards. I was going crazy. But I felt like I was walking out to the swimming pool. I felt like Justin Bieber escorting like Floyd Mayweather out to a championship fight. I take my towel off, and everyone sits there and stares at me, and they just say, like they're Destiny's Child. It felt like it was in unison. Ew. So for me, that was like a body shaming. First time I even realized like I was in this body and I didn't want to be in this body. And if I would have had like a Harry Potter cloak, I would have threw it over me. I would have disappeared. If I could have get on a rocket ship, I would have booked it, Julie. I would have been gone, right?
Mhm.
But from that moment forward, it was just this kind of realization of like, all right, I want things to be a little bit different. So I started following my older brother around who was playing basketball, and I kind of got into sports. And eventually, got good enough to play in college. So I was studied biology at the SUNY New Paltz. And while I was at
Mhm.
school, my strength and conditioning coach, he exposed me to the weight room. And it was one of those situations where, I kind of went from being this overweight kid to also going to college. I went the opposite way. I was like this, like frail, thin athlete, but didn't still feel confident in my body. I was kind of placing a lot of my confidence always externally, always elsewhere, right? And for me, the weight room was this place of really regaining, or rather, beginning to write the narrative of what my identity was and who I wanted to become. Like, it's so cool. Like, I think fitness in general is like this. It's this safe space for us to get really uncomfortable and really test our limitations. And that's exactly what I was
Mhm.
able to do back there in college. And I began to feel that confidence seep out of the weight room. Like I'd go into the bars and, my head's held a little bit higher. I'm giving a presentation in class and I felt a little bit better. And I was just like, everybody needs to experience this. Like when you're confident in who you are, you step out into the world as a higher elevated version of yourself. Like I
Mhm.
firmly believe that, right? Confidence, we could walk into rooms and we could do exceptional things if we just believe, because the belief has to start within us before it's going to go anywhere else. So for me,
Mhm.
I immediately was like, all right, like how do I go and spread this? And my strength coach at the time, he was like, dude, like why don't you go and get a personal training cert? Like we're actually launching this program on campus. And that was kind of like my kickstart into the fitness industry. And like my methodology has definitely evolved over time. it definitely started out with just, how could I look and feel my best? But then it began to like kind of blend through some other life circumstances. Like, my father passed away randomly of a heart attack 10 years ago. And at that point, I'd been like a year or two out of college, and, I was working on building this business. I'm running from building to building. I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm back at 8:30 p.m. And, I really never, me and him had this like kind of tumultuous little relationship, just in the fact that my father was an immigrant from Nigeria. And, for him, the conversation we used to have was like, do you need to be a doctor? You need to be a lawyer? You're unsuccessful. That's how immigrant parents at times, man. Like, his route and
Mm-hmm.
his understanding of what success looked like was just different from what I was trying to cultivate. So for him, it was just kind of like he was showing love in the way that he understood how to show love. He just wanted me to be successful. He wanted me to be happy. But I had this kind of chip on my shoulder of like, all right, I'm doing something special here, but I'm still telling people, "Oh, I'm gonna go to physical therapy school while I'm doing this." I was not really owning what I was doing and understanding how special it was. But I was gonna prove to my father that I could get out into this world and I could impact and change lives. And I would ignore
Mm-hmm.
phone calls and, kind of just this chip of the shoulder of just not really being as present as I could, or really just respecting the time I had on this planet with my father. And, eventually he has this random heart attack when I'm 25 years old. He's 52. It was like super random. And this is a guy who I thought was going to be, I have two young children. I have a 3-year-old. I have an 18-month-old. I'm thinking he's going to be hoisting them up in the air. They're on his shoulder. We're sharing laughs. We're sharing parent war stories, changing diapers, and life just kind of worked out differently. So for me, that began also another journey of incorporating mindfulness, incorporating the power of the present moment, right? Like, so, I kind of blend that with fitness and just kind of help people really understand how to be able to take a step back and really go into their inner world and understand what it is that they actually want, right? In the fitness industry,
Mm-hmm.
it's so, you get the summertime's coming up, right? So the six pack abs, the 20-inch pythons, you know what I'm saying? Like, but which a lot of time, which is not bad if that's what you
I'm
want,
working
right?
on mine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see you too, man. So, like, I don't think that's bad at all, right? But a lot of times, too,
Yeah.
with any change in life, it's difficult. It takes time. And a lot of times, if we
Mhm.
don't really know those intrinsic motivations that are going to allow us to push through the inner, like, the road bumps that are coming, right? The road bumps are coming. If we
Mhm.
don't have the intrinsic motivation that's going to allow us to navigate those bumpy roads that are ahead of us, we're going to fall out the game. So I really feel like being able to go into that inner world, get clear on what it is that you actually want, what it is that you value, what it is that you need to become in order to get out into the world and create the change you're looking for. I think that's powerful.
Mhm. Oh, there's so many things about, and obviously I've heard your story before, and but when I hear you share it, there's just so many pieces that, you know, whether somebody's had your exact experience or they can relate to so many pieces of your story, whether it's from the, you know, not having the confidence as a kid to feeling body shamed to this idea of that external, validation or confidence for outside of ourselves, or that moment where I say life kind of punches you in the face and now you lose your dad, and we have this moment where we go like, oh my gosh, like this is what life is really about. Like all of these pieces, and I always get goosebumps when you share it because it's so important and relevant to so many people. What really stood out for me, and you're just kind of sharing all this, was this idea of having this picture in your head of what life is going to be like versus the reality of what happens.
Yeah.
What did you do? How did you navigate? Because in their story I heard multiple times where it's like I kind of had this thing in my head, but it wasn't the reality or where I saw my life going, or where,
Yeah.
how do you, navigate that sort of like incongruency between like what we believe is going to happen or what's in our head versus like what's actually happening?
I think so many times, you make a very, very valid point. I think so many of us get so, number one, tripped up by past mistakes we've made, or
Mm.
we look at this future that hasn't even happened yet and we get so stressed out and anxious about creating it. With me, it really involved sitting down, grabbing out a pen and paper, and getting clear on what my values were, right? And I've found throughout my history and my existence that when I've been living out of accordance with my values, that tended to be when I felt rushed. It tended to feel when I was anxious or feeling like I wasn't, reaching my full potential or maxing out what I was able to be doing in this world. And so getting clear on what exactly those were and applying that to
Mhm.
my idea of just the present moment, right? Like how am I actually now that I have these values listed out and they're clear and they're in front of me on a day-to-day basis, and maybe it doesn't have to be day-to-day, but like day-to-day, week to week, right? Am I constantly checking in to see if I'm living in accordance with these things? Am I building the
Mhm.
habits that allow me to, if I talk about being grateful as one of my core values, how am I expressing gratitude on a day in day out basis? For me, that's jumping up. That's gratitude journaling the first thing when I wake up. It's connecting with. I have a like two. I try to connect with 2 to 4 people a day, just reaching out and just saying, thank you. How are you doing? How can I support you? And whether it's people
Mhm.
who have done the same thing for me or it's just me trying to just uplift somebody else, that for me is an attitude of gratitude. It's paying it forward to what has been done to me in my life and how I've been supported and helped. So I
Mhm.
really try to just kind of connect the two between what it is that I'm trying to cultivate, what are my values, right? And how can I actually, what I'm doing today is what's going to dictate what comes later. So really kind of
Mhm.
taking a step back and understanding that has been a really impactful thing that's transformed my life, to be honest.
Mhm. And I mean, I love that you talk about this. This is something that I talk to clients about. And when I do certain trainings, we talk about values exercises. And so often people are so unclear of what their values are. Or they've sort of adopted these values from their family. Like they saw that there was these certain family values. And so they just kind of adopt them to be true for
Yeah,
themselves, but they really aren't.
yeah,
And people end up going towards things or living lives, right, so misaligned. And so I think that's the first piece is so often people aren't really clear on what their values are. Or the other thing that's huge that you hit on is this idea of not actually living. Like a lot of people will say they value family or health or gratitude, but if we were to look into their day-to-day life, we can't actually see their values in action.
100%.
And so I always say it's like when you feel burnt out or overwhelmed, it's oftentimes because you're misaligned from your
Well,
values. And so for you, it's like I can clearly see some of your values in action, whether they're the actual words you use for your values, because we see it in the way that you show up and the way that you're
yeah.
spending your day. So that's so important. I heard you say just like getting more clear on your values and
Hmm.
actually living into them, being more present in the moment, and then the
Exactly.
habits being a huge one.
100%. Like, I think too, when it comes to the habit too, like, I think about goal setting a lot of times, right? So in
Mm,
general, if we talk about people kind of living out of alignment with goals, like you can kind of think of, let's say, like American Dream, right? Like the 2.5 kids, picket fence. Everyone feels like they
mm,
need to chase and achieve that. So there's so many people who get burnt out and overwhelmed chasing something that isn't really for them. So once you kind of get clear on what those values are, I'm really big on then taking a step back and saying to yourself, what is the new identity that I need to take on that puts me in alignment with these values? I think a lot of times when people
mm,
think about goals, we just think it's like this, James Clear talks about a lot, and I kind of really lean heavily into that golden circle of identity, right? The outside, we
mm.
have our results. So most of us are very outcome dependent when we set goals. Like, I want to lose the 20 pounds. I want to squat the 500 pounds. I want to, make this $1 million. One more layer down is our actual process, or what are the things we do on a day in, day out basis to actually bring those outcome goals to fruition. And then, but beneath that is something even deeper, right? It's our identity. It's our belief about the world around us. It's our belief about our self image and our ability to get out into the world and accomplish things. It's our judgment
Mhm.
that we have about ourselves and others. And I really think that center core, right? Establishing what our new identity is going to be is really important. But even more important than that is getting out and proving it to yourself. You can't just tell yourself that, I'm just this go getter, right? And your actions aren't aligned up with how you want to show up. So I think finding and getting, like, figuring out what that identity is and then listing the small wins that you can kind of knock out on a weekly basis that prove to yourself, all right, I'm really am that person. I feel like it's really
Mm,
empowering. And I really have my clients do that a ton. And we kind of build it into the system of how we work.
mm. Oh, so many things. I love James Clear. I think I've read so many books on habits, but I think the way that he explains them and
It's
making it part of your identity is the biggest shift. I
Mhm.
talk about it a lot for myself and for clients too, and like showing up as that person. My word of the year this year is embody, and I write it down every single morning because it's this idea of if we want to create this new self, you have to get really clear on who that is, but then also like you're saying, showing up as that person now and doing things and making choices as if
Yeah.
you're that person. And, just hearing you talk about this, I remember, one of the first times we talked is you said that, and I'm not going to say it exactly the same way, but you said that working with people on their, with training them and their fitness is like the entry point into some of this deeper stuff, like in transforming
100%.
people. What are, and maybe it's the things you're talking about, but when you're working with clients, what are some of the things that the clients that you see get the most long term sustainable like success and transformation? What are they doing differently?
So I definitely think, boom, I think number one, it comes down to getting clear on the values. I think that I would say is the biggest piece because transforming whatever fitness goal you want to accomplish, I feel like, we live in an industry or fitness industry in general that the quick get fix or get rich quick schemes or the lose the
Mm-hmm.
20 pounds in 30 days, that's readily advertised all the time. And the truth is, any change that you want to make is going to be the result of compound interest when it comes to the actions and how you show up, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell my clients like the choices we make are basically votes for the person that we want to become. So if we can get
Mm-hmm.
clear on just the values, that's just going to allow us to be like a North Star that's just going to, when we fall off, because nobody's perfect, we're human beings. And, as opposed to living on this all or nothing kind of Ferris wheel, it's so important to understand and live through a continuum, right? Like always something mentality. So things are going to go wrong at times. You're going to make mistakes, but the people who can always redirect and just take a step back and look themselves in the eye and just say, hey, is this what I really want? Is this in alignment with my core values? More often than not, they're going to be making more of the choices that push them in the direction of where they want to go. Because nothing is, I try to take morality out of it. There's nothing's really good or bad, but things just either pull us closer or push us further away from where we want to go. And there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
seasons that we go through in our life in general where, some seasons are just going to be tougher than others. But the more we can stay in alignment with these core values, the better off we're going to be. And then I also
Mm-hmm.
find people like making the process enjoyable is so important too, right? Like, so I feel like there's so many times, you have somebody who's just like, I have to lift a barbell in the gym and go crazy to get better. You have the other person in the corner, like, I have to do Pilates. That's all I can do. Like, find what works for you, or rather, like, they see what works for other people. That's what I meant. They see the barbell stuff
Mm-hmm.
working for somebody else, or this person has this Pilates body, and that's what works for them. So it needs to work for me. I really feel like you need to create and find a process that's enjoyable to you because you'll be consistent, number one, right? And I'm not saying everything is going to be fun because you will have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, but you're much more likely to show up with some level of enthusiasm when you actually enjoy what you're doing. Like, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
powerful. And I think too, like, I'm really big on working with building habits and skills because I feel like the whole system of, like, I look at my training and I look at my meditation as a practice that I'm constantly working and getting better at over time. Some sessions are going to be some mindset sessions when I'm doing some meditations. I'm like, man, my head is everywhere. It's like darting to the left,
Mm-hmm.
right, around the ground. I'm thinking about everything, but I don't leave that session thinking I'm a failure. I just kind of take it and put it into the bank and understand that this is a part of the climb to getting to where I want to go. So I think the more we can look at skill acquisition along our process, what are some new things that I can learn? Like if you're into kettlebells, maybe I can learn the clean or the swing, but this is also inadvertently working to help me develop power, build muscle, right? So there's different ways in terms of nutrition, you know, uh, skills like mindful eating, being able to just slow down and be present the weekend before you start your week, just being able to meal plan a little bit. These are all skills that build up into the results that you're looking for. So I find that the
Mm-hmm.
people, as opposed to just staring at the outcomes, who focus there, it's very easy to get frustrated or upset when things aren't going your way as fast as you want them to. But if we can kind of create a more empowering process, we're able to stick around long enough to actually see the change that we initially signed up for. So,
Mm-hmm. And I love the approach when you said, it's taking away the judgment of it being good or bad versus it's either going to push you closer or further away
sure.
and casting a vote for the person. Like those are so powerful things because when we have that all or nothing mentality, then something doesn't go our way, we get sick, we get injured, something happens
Yeah.
and you're either going to throw in the towel then and be like, what's the point? Or you're going to keep going. So really building that sustain. I mean, that's the reason that, you see success with your clients too, is because it's not just the outcome focused. It's on,
Yeah,
again, becoming that person. And becoming that
right.
person doesn't mean it's easy. So if somebody's listening, sometimes what I hear people say, it's like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say that. Or, I've got all these things happening in my life. And, what if I keep getting knocked down? So tell us a little bit more about maybe, you know, a little bit your experience with that, maybe for yourself or with clients, where it just kind of
Mhm.
felt like things just kept coming at you, but because you had built these habits, it really got you through.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, as a father of two two young kids, I can say, I went to a wedding I officiated a wedding this weekend, and then, my both my kids went and stood with a cousin of mine. They both came back sick, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
they've been home the entire week, and I work from home. So being able to, number one, the habit of meditation and mindfulness and just being present, and
Mm-hmm.
just it's just allowed me to tackle that in a completely different way. I just understand we're human beings, and life is always, people tend to want to wait for the stars to perfectly align. There never will be that perfect time. And even if we talk about going and achieving a goal, I really implore you to look at it as this ongoing, continuing journey, that you're never going to be this perfect straight line going forward. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to have to pull over to the side of the road and park your car sometimes. But if we have the tools, we have the habits, we have the skills, we're always going to have the gas to throw in the car. We're always going to have the key to put back in the ignition and kick back off onto the road. And I see this with clients all the time. Like, and I see as a father, like, I
Mm-hmm.
just have to be adaptable. I have to understand and be able to head back and look at my why constantly, right? There's so many points of potential like frustration, and you just sit there and I take the deep inhale, deep exhale, and I'm able to separate myself from that moment and understand that
Mm-hmm.
this isn't going to be forever, right? Like this moment of adversity that I'm experiencing won't last forever. Like after the peaks come the valleys, right? Like that's, and they alternate. So being able to just have that toolkit that you can go back to kick yourself back off. Like if you have the skills, you have the habits, but also you understand your why of why you initially started this process in the beginning. That's always going to be something that will re-inspire you or reignite you when you feel like your flame is off. And then also surrounding
Mm-hmm.
yourself, like Julia said, every time I speak to you and I connect with you, I leave feeling more inspired. I leave feeling like the fire has been relit. So for me as well, getting community, getting people, it could be a coach, it could be, like a workout partner, it could be other people going through a similar journey as you. But when your flame goes out, being able to lean your head to the left or right and reignite your flame on somebody else's, that's also a powerful thing. Maybe for somebody, it's just like jumping on YouTube and like watching the right video that they like and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But having these tools to be able to continue to push yourself along is so powerful. And then showing
Mm-hmm.
yourself, I feel like compassion over criticism is so important as well. I think so many times we think that just kind of beating ourselves, and in general, we have this negativity bias. So you're much more likely to look at what you feel like you should be doing as opposed to what you have been doing right. And I really implore you to reverse that. I want you to get out and I want you to celebrate your wins from the beginning. Get your pom poms out, start pumping them, and
Yeah.
celebrate every victory, right? Because that really leaves you in a better place. Critique and beating yourself up doesn't really leave us very confident, doesn't really leave us very motivated. But if we can look at what we're already doing right and we can double down, that's going to put us in a better place to just keep advancing and then kind of work on the things we need to work on along the path. So I'm really big
Mm-hmm.
on, me personally too. In addition, when I do my gratitude journal in the morning, one of the first things I do is I look at how I'm going to win my day personally. So I try to give myself three small wins to get out and attack that day.
Mm-hmm.
And when I revisit at the end of the day, I try to go and celebrate myself and maybe say I knocked out one of those wins. That's still a win. So I'm starting my day with this understanding of like I control my destiny. And I'm finishing this day with this understanding of, yeah, I did something to move the needle forward. So make your process support you as opposed to beat you down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Yeah, so
big.
many people, it's like they feel like they are driven by, like, I've got to do better, I've got to do better. And like
Yeah.
that can motivate you to an extent, but it doesn't, and even in the research, it doesn't create long-term fulfillment and happiness if we're constantly motivating ourselves through like stress and burnout. And so it's like being a cheerleader for yourself, and on the times when you feel like I've got nothing left, like I have nothing to cheer for right now, you have people in your corner like Soji, or a community of people who can lift you up, because we all find that time where it's like, okay, I've been cheering myself on and it just doesn't seem to be working. And so you surround yourself with people who can do it, who can be like, okay, I see they're kind of in that valley right now. Let me like help encourage them. And as a fellow parent and entrepreneur, I really felt you on the times when it's like your kids are off school or they're sick. Or we had something this week too where my son, he had off school on Monday for a teacher in service, and then Tuesday he kind of had a stomach ache. He was home, and as like working parents, you're like, okay, I got to readjust my schedule, because we can either get into that like stressed state and,
Hmm.
anxious and overwhelmed, or we can calm ourselves,
So
which is
true.
something I'm continuing to work on. So I want to talk a little bit about your meditation. Like, what actually got you? So you're obviously into, the training, and you started with that, and the, helping people with their fitness goals. What got you into the meditation piece and starting to
Yeah.
incorporate more of that in your for yourself and clients, and what type of changes have you seen incorporating that in your life?
So meditation has been a game changer for me. So I was originally introduced to the concept of it in high school by my mother, but it was just something that was kind of floating in the background of my head. Played around with it a little bit in college, but I would say my whole grief experience is what really dictated me back around to meditation, and really just the one beginning to, because I would say like when my father first passed, I try to go right back to work 3 days later, right? And I remember being with the client and just like breaking down and just crying, and just that was my thing of like, you need to figure this out. You need to go inside. You need to deal with maybe some of the situations that you've never dealt with before. And I really feel like meditation, in a way, it's coming home to yourself, right? It's being
Mm-hmm.
able to go into that inner world and just begin to explore, right? Like, and I feel like we can't really dictate a lot of things that are going around the outside of us, but the more we can control or kind of get a grip of what's going on inside of us, it just leaves us in a better space to be able to handle the outside world. And so for me, that was just a place of, it was a slap in the face of not being present and not like living out of alignment with what I was preaching other people to live. And it really, it parked that. I talked about pulling to the side of the road and parking that
Mm-hmm.
car. I had to really park my car and look back at my checklist of life and just say, where do I want to be in 5 or 10 years? And is how I'm moving now, does that put me in a space of fulfillment and put me on the path to where I want to go? And it just really, it really didn't. Like, I was very family oriented. I'm big into spending time with community, spending time for growth experiences. And I just was moving so quickly. I wasn't even taking care of myself in that aspect. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
started small. It started with jumping on like a headspace or a calm, and just kind of beginning to tap into a guided situation in that aspect. But eventually, like, and I would say definitely then going into, going forward in life, going into the pandemic, that's another place where like was full of stress. Like say my
Mm-hmm.
wife lost her job. I was the sole provider. We just had our first kid. So we're all in this small one apartment. I'm working from home. There's a new baby crawling in the background. So stress was
Yeah.
at an all-time high at this point. So I needed to be able to, I feel like for meditation, a lot of times people say they don't have enough time. And I really feel like if you're in a situation you feel like you don't have enough time, that is more so when you need it. Right. So I was just in a
Mm-hmm.
situation of like, I need to keep my cup full so I can pour into the cups of other people, and I can show up as the best coach or husband or father. And, like this, I would say too, I did it after my father died. That's what kind of kicked me back in. But I'm going to say that pandemic period, that was like every day I have to do this. And that is what just kept me level headed. And for me, I find that it's really the power of the pause is the biggest thing, right? Like, so there's this space between stimulus and response. And that's that pause that a lot of us, we lose control of. That person irritates you or cuts you off in traffic. Some people, their automatic response is the double birds. You know what I'm saying? They're
Yeah.
going, they're flipping them off and they're going. But like what this has really allowed me to do is be a better parent, for example. I have a kid who kind of pops in and he's a little frustrated because he doesn't maybe have the right coping mechanisms right now. But how he sees me react, that's how he's going to learn how to react. So he comes in and he's flustered. If I just kind of flip out and go back, I'm not setting a good example, and I'm also losing control. So what I've learned or what I've saw, it's allowed me to just regain control of myself in moments of stress with my kids, with
Mhm.
my partners, be more empathetic as a partner, as a coach. Stress and anxiety has dropped. I'm going to say sleep quality has improved. And I'll definitely say, like, there's different periods of being a parent with two young
Yeah.
kids where quantity is not good. But if I could get
Yeah.
the quality, I'm going to take that and
Yeah.
absorb it and go all in. Emotional response. Like, I really feel like there's just so many benefits
Mm.
to developing a consistent meditation practice. And so many people feel like it has to look a certain way. And I feel like that's the biggest misconception around meditation.
Mm. Hmm. What does that like that because that's a huge piece and this was a big I mean I'm obviously a coach and I'm trained in neuroscience and we do a little bit of breath work visualization type meditation stuff sometimes, not certified in meditation, but I've tried to incorporate more in my
That's
own life. Even
powerful.
still, falling trap to just lifing, as I say. Like last year I specifically remember this moment. My son's in he was in kindergarten last year and like trying to get him out of the house in the morning. And it was another morning where I'm like, I call it like my hot mess express. I'm like the hot mess express. And I swear I'm trying to pack his lunch and snacks and breakfast. And we've got like literally like food flying and I'm like pouring things and it's spilling and I'm yelling, Sawyer, get your shoes on. And I remember just stopping and just being like, slow down. Like I can feel my heart rate in that moment. Like I was just like, slow down because we had been living in that state for so long where it's
Yeah,
like my head was going faster than anything. And
yeah.
now, granted, I need to do more work on this, but I know I'm not alone in this because I shared my story, I
Yeah.
think, on episodes and I had people reach out on social media. And it's like, I think building what I'm hearing from you is like building the practice and the muscle, right? So that we
Yeah,
can be more prepared in those moments.
yeah.
But for somebody who's saying, like, how do I even get started? Like, where do I even start? What do you tell your clients? What do you do when it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do it every single day, or I'm not going to be able to do it for 30 minutes? Like, what's the starting point that people should do?
So I think that's powerful. I love Hot Mess Express because I
Yeah.
resonate. I resonate
Yes.
deeply with that mornings, man. I think number one, I feel like people when they think of meditation, they think you gotta go bald and you gotta like throw the robes on and move out to a mountain in Tibet. Meditation is for everyone, right? And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the biggest thing we can do is start small. And just like with and like some other habit kind of tactics, I would just maybe tack it onto something that you already do, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
there's a morning routine that you have, like maybe you brush your teeth, maybe it's, before I brush my teeth, I pop up right in the morning, I'm going into my mindfulness, then I go and brush. Or maybe it's something you do at night that is a cool down ritual. But I say
Mm-hmm.
start small. There is no right position that you need to be in, right? Like, I want you to kind of find a spot where you feel focused and alert, but I feel like a lot of times you don't need to be sitting cross-legged. You don't need like the thing is if you are more comfortable, you're much more likely to do it and you'll see benefits. Like there have been even research studies with people who are new to meditation. You practice for 5 minutes in 8 weeks, stress is down, anxiety is down, focus and concentration is up. We don't need a lot of time to do this. When I first started, I jumped on like an app that was just guided for me. And even now to this day, there's some days I wake up and I'm just like, I kind of don't want to do it myself. I just want to kind of get a message today. So I will still go to an app like the Open app and just kind of do it when I don't want to do it. And there's other days where I just explore and go myself. But I would say for you, if you're somebody who's new and you're fresh to this, jumping on an app might be an easy thing to do. Getting to a
Mm-hmm.
community, because a lot of times when we show up in a group of other people, no matter what it is, we show up in a different way, right? So if you have a community around you, whether it be virtual, whether it be in person, that you can go to being inspired in a more spiritual sense, I say get out and give it a try, right? Like accountability is a big thing for this too as well. And then a lot of times people feel like I feel like the understanding of meditation or belief about it is that you need to clear all thoughts. Like depending on what like scientific study or paper you read, you could see anywhere that the average human can think about 60,000 plus thoughts a day. So if you're sitting around and you plan to erase all of those, you, my friend, you're going to have a long task ahead of you, right? So the idea of even actually acknowledging a thought, right? Acknowledging that it's actually happening and returning your focus and attention to your breath, to the rising and falling of your belly, to your butt sinking into the chair. That right there is you being present. That is you practicing mindfulness and meditation effectively. Like give yourself a pat on the back. You just did it. You just
Mm-hmm.
returning like that, as opposed to jumping on that thought and riding it down to Grand Central Station. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
crushing it. So I think being able to take a step back and being compassionate about your experience, understanding that it's going to be a practice that's going to be good some days, that's going to be feel a little funky other days, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. I think that's a powerful thing. And then trying different types, right? Like there's, if you're somebody who gets antsy from sitting around, maybe it's getting up on your feet and walking around doing a walking meditation. I would advise keep your eyes open though. You're
Yeah,
outside just
right.
walking. So, but even like there's some days I try walking meditation where I'm just kind of walking. I'm seeing people, they're passing me. I'm just smiling, sending love, but in my head, I'm just present in that moment, right? Like there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different ways. There's loving kindness meditation, which is a meditation based off of just giving well wishes to other people. And I think as humans, a lot of times it's so much easier for us to show love to other people than it is to ourselves. So if you're somebody who struggles with giving yourself self-compassion, that might be a good place to start, right? Like just kind of sending love to think of a best friend or somebody who has been very highly supportive to you on your journey and whatever it is that you're going after. Like there's so many different ways to approach it. But I think
Mm-hmm.
trying different things, starting small, and just kind of trying to be consistent with it by starting small, I think it's powerful.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you explain it too, because it releases the pressure. I think people can feel the pressure if they have to do it right, or like you
Yeah.
said, they have to do it, laying on the floor, sitting on, with their eyes closed for 45 minutes. It just
Yeah.
releases the pressure that there's so many different forms of meditation. The walking meditation,
100%.
just a few deep breaths and acknowledging that you can start to do whatever's going to like fit for you in your life. So I'm taking away a note that this has
It's always.
been, I do it sporadically.
Hmm.
I try and do it a couple times a week, but for
Hmm.
me, because the way that my brain is always going, it's very hard to quiet. Like I would like to do it more. So I'm like, okay, note, Julie, release the pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Doesn't.
Even though I know these things, I need Soji to remind me. And just finding, sometimes I do guided ones. I've done walking ones.
Yeah.
So just finding more of the habit and being able to do it more often.
Yeah.
And, Soji, as you're talking, so obviously we're working together to help you get your message out into the world, because all of you listening right now, I know, are like, I need more Soji in my life. And obviously everything that you've been through, and, we're working to like bring that together. And one of the things that I usually ask when I start working with people is like, what is the message that you want to share with people? So when you think about, your life experiences and the clients you're helping, people with, what is the thing that you just want to tell people, or like shake them and tell them?
You were really within, like, I mean, the title of your podcast really says it all to me. Like it starts from within. I've been really big
Mm-hmm.
on like, I'm born and raised, and I come from the projects in the Bronx, and I'm talking like bunk beds. Like I remember being 7 years old, turn the light on, stomping, roaches running everywhere. Like you're like, I'm from poverty, and I've been able to cultivate and create some amazing things in this life because I have not allowed other people to take the pen of my story and dictate what that looks like, right? So I have so many instances where a lot of friends who dead in jail or just been in difficult situations. Like, and I've been in, you know what I mean? Like, been robbed at gunpoint. Like, just so many different situations of like life just really tried to steer me in a different direction, and I was just kind of firmly able to take the pen back and write down where I wanted to go, who I was, begin to validate myself, begin to believe in myself. And all that starts from what we cultivate in our core values and our identity and getting out into the world and proving what we set to ourselves. So I would just say, like, whatever situation you're in right now, it isn't fatal, it isn't final. And you can always take that pen back and you can always move in something in a different direction. Like I'm a firm believer in that. Firm believer.
Thank you for sharing that as part of your story. And, it is so important, because if you're listening, you're going like, well, I've got all these things that have happened to me. Listen to Soji's story. Listen to what Soji's been through. See what other people have been through. And I love that idea of like, you can take the pen back. You can change it. You can change the next paragraph, the next sentence, the next
Yeah.
chapter, and it can look completely different, and you have that choice. And right, that's why the name of the podcast is It Starts With You,
It's
because so often
powerful.
we seek things outside of ourselves, and you helping people to realize that and doing it through the avenue, obviously, of building their confidence through, the physical practices, but also the mindset. I mean, that's just where you see the best results. So
Powerful.
as
Yeah.
Soji said, take that pen back, and no matter what you're in. And I think some people are in really hard seasons of life right now. Like I've talked to a lot of people, everything that's going on, and, stress with economy or whatever it might be. If you're in that place where, I don't know, like I said, I think I said before, but like life is lifing, where it's just like, that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
It's
And I like,
okay.
yeah,
And doing these things will help.
yeah. And I like to tell my clients, like, we're the master of our game boards, right? Like, like the pieces are going to be laid out where they are, and you may have to start this game over a couple times, but you're the only person who dictates what these positions of these pieces mean and where you can go from there. You can start over as many times as you need to, right? But the story that you give to that board and the story that you write is going to dictate how this game plays out. So, what do you want to do with your game board?
Ooh, oh, I feel like we need a mic drop on that one. Like, we need to end with a little more, but like, I love that. Like, what do you want to do with your game board? That's huge. That's huge. And maybe you need to like sit with that for a minute on what he just said. Like, rewind this a little bit, listen to him say it again, because that's a really huge thing. Okay, Soji, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we talked about so many amazing things. Thank you for sharing your story, but also some of the tangible things that people can start to do to implement small little pieces of this and move the needle. And so I know people are going to want to stay connected to you. So can you share with us, what do you have going on right now? How can people work with you? How can people find you?
I would love to, Julie. Appreciate you. You can find me at sojijames.com. So SOJIJAMES.com. You can find me on Instagram at soji.james1. So SOJI.JAMES number one. And right now we are cultivating and putting together an exceptional keynote. I'm really excited to end my year kind of getting on stages and shaking rooms up and getting people moving. If you're looking to, work with me in a mindfulness or strength and conditioning like capacity, I'm launching a virtual kind of meditation room, so Club Meta. That's going to be out soon. You can DM me, and you'll see a lot more about that on my page very soon. And yeah, I'd love to connect, and love to just get people moving in a good direction and taking back those pens. So thank you very much for having me and just allowing me to share my story, Julia. I genuinely appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And we'll also make sure that we drop all of the links to connect with Soji in the show notes. So make sure you check those out. And please, after you listen to this episode, let Soji know what stood out for you, right? Like, that is how we help get this message to more people, make a connection. That's why we do podcasting, so that we can genuinely help you. So share it out, tag us, send Soji a message, let him know what he said that really resonated with you. And just all remember that it starts with you. And in Soji's words, take back the pen.